There are very few pop culture questions that separate my head from my heart. For example, if I ask myself, is WandaVision a good TV show? My heart says no, and then my brain says, let me tell you the reasons why the heart is correct. But I ran into a question recently that managed to separate my emotions from my logic. And that question was, for making television, what is the ideal role of a network? My heart says that the best thing a network can be is essentially a rich, mute patron of the arts who steps out of his weird, spooky house on top of a hill long enough to write the most creative person they can find a check for $10 million before slinking back to pose for yet another shirtless oil painting. But I should disclose that I have some personal experience that colors my opinion here. For over 2 years, I worked in creative development at one of the larger streaming services around. I don't want to give it away, but it's named after a fruit. It's sort of the opposite of Orange TV minus, and if I were to generalize about the creative contributions I saw network executives make on a daily basis, like no exaggerated metaphors, just measured thoughts, it's that more often than not, they are talentless, crusty barnacles clinging to the bottom of a creative person's speedboat, only serving to make the journey more bumpy and slow and filled with unnecessary group hugs. But I'm not trying to cast stones, like I put myself into the barnacle category too. I think to some extent it's baked into the job, but even beyond my own personal experience, there's a lot of evidence suggesting that removing all of the barnacles from the creative process makes sense, even from a business perspective. By many accounts, that model has made Adult Swim an oasis for creative people disillusioned by the overbearing entertainment industry. It's where they can go to make their passion projects with minimal studio involvement. Like, Dan Harmon has contrasted his turbulent experience writing Community at NBC against his process writing Rick and Morty at Adult Swim by saying, Adult Swim never says, I don't think people are going to like this. They never say people are going to respond this way when this happens. The big bad suits don't exist at Adult Swim. And being able to write unencumbered by NBC executives has allowed Harmon to create a show that is consistently clearer to his own vision and has been received by the world as an enormous hit. And so the only thing that's stopping me from ending the video here with my heart victorious is the small problem that I like Community more. And to be clear, I'm not making the dumb argument that because I happen to personally like Community more than Rick and Morty, it's therefore a better show and networks are good. I'm making an entirely different dumb argument that I like Community more directly because of its big bad suits. For multiple reasons. Like, on a core level, I think there's something inherently compelling about watching a very creative person push the boundaries of a restrictive medium.
What the hell is wrong with you? Like, that's legal, and suddenly, when does it become illegal? When is it? Is it illegal yet? There you go.
And this pixelated middle finger dynamic seems to be exactly what Harmon was going through while writing Community.
I probably wasn't cut out to be a primetime broadcast showrunner. No, I don't want to cast the situation from Jersey Shore in an episode of Community on the off chance that that's somehow going to cause a spike that's going to keep someone from getting fired.
Was that a corporate pitch?
Yeah, I don't want to say yes, but yeah.
And to be clear, there are negative consequences to watching a showrunner gorilla try to break out of his cage. For every middle finger that gets hilariously pixelated, there's another middle finger that doesn't even make it to air. There are tons of funny and challenging things on Rick and Morty that would have been censored by primetime NBC. But more often than not, that's actually a positive for me. Because the more I age, the more interested I am in art that strikes a balance between challenging and comfort. The emotional reservoir I had when I was 19 to slog through a Paul Thomas Anderson film has, in the words of Daniel Plainview, ironically been drained dry. I actually think this is true for a lot of people, and it's why networks hit creators over the head to make shows more comfortable to the audience. And when writers without a certain level of creative stubbornness are given that note, I think that's when we get shows that lean more in the direction of unnecessary group hugs. But when that note is given to a certain type of showrunner that would sooner leave the project than bend the knee to make the type of empty comfort food networks are ordering, those opposing pressures often create the pearls or diamonds or whatever metaphor you want that I love the most as a viewer. I think a great example of this is what James Gunn has accomplished with the Guardians of the Galaxy. In my opinion, Gunn wildly succeeded at taking the ethos of Marvel's note to make Guardians comfortable enough to appeal to a wide audience without compromising the quality of the work. And instead of mindless comfort, the result was an immensely creative form of comfort. And so I was really intrigued when I heard that Gunn was writing Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, because DC was so happy to have Gunn on board, they gave him a level of creative control similar to what Harmon had with Rick and Morty.
I mean, one of the things that excited me about doing the show was there's no rules. I mean, there's no rules whatsoever. They were going to let me do whatever.
I watched the last movie for the first time, and I said, you know, what do I have to keep from the movie, and what do I not have to keep? And he said, you don't have to keep anything. He said, you could change everybody. You could change nobody. We love Margot. We'd love it if she was in the movie, but you don't have to keep her. You can do whatever you want.
And even though I don't doubt that his DC projects are more uncut guns, I still walked away from Suicide Squad thinking that Guardians gave me a better version of everything that I enjoyed, but with one big addition: comfort.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which I know is something that's hard to quantify, but while watching Suicide Squad, I couldn't shake the feeling that Gunn was like a kid at home without a babysitter, testing to see what he could get away with. Like a 10-year-old boy interested in explosions and grossed out by kissing, I felt the sense of romance that was at the core of Guardians was replaced by an endless montage of every creative murder that Marvel would have never let him get away with, but quickly felt repetitive to me.
You're just going to walk forward and shoot the fuck out of him.
As an audience member, nothing sets me more at ease than the moment I realize I'm watching the best version of something. And where both Guardians movies had the polish of an overbearing studio shaving some of the sharp edges off of its creator, to me, Suicide Squad and Peacemaker felt more like Gunn banged them out over a weekend.
I'm just in the middle of writing Volume 3 right now, so who knows exactly what's going to happen.
Stuff like that.
You're pretending that I had time to do a second pass of any of these scripts, Jeff.
Right.
That was pretty quick.
And while making this video, I kept asking myself if I'm maybe just cherry picking Gunn and Harmon as examples here, but I don't think that I am. Like, I feel the same way about enjoying Arrested Development more during its notoriously abusive days at Fox than when cool stepdad Netflix let Hurwitz do whatever he wants, because if he's gonna experiment, they would rather he do it at their house than with some strange network.
It goes to this idea of the more constraints you have in creativity, to me, sometimes the more creative you can be.
I also want to stress that I don't think there's any right answer here. Like, maybe you enjoy Rick and Morty more than Community and Peacemaker more than Guardians. Like, my heart agrees that letting writers work without corporate interference should be best, but my dumb head still can't get over the fact that I seem to prefer a slightly watered down Dan Harmon over a craft distilled Harmon. And speaking of Dan, when I said earlier that I used to work in creative development, I didn't just work with random executives. I worked with the exact people that Dan Harmon butted heads with during Community. And so it was really interesting to every morning refill your water bottle next to the guy who shaved 10 years off of Bird Person's life and who I can corroborate has the creative intelligence of a damp graham cracker. And so it goes against every instinct I have to say what I'm about to say, but the facts tell me that that corporately bloated graham cracker, when paired with the right creative narcissist marshmallow, sometimes makes a good s'more. And if I were asked why, I'm still not sure. But my head and my heart can finally find some reconciliation by way of a 1960s sitcom. Not WandaVision, get that shit out of here. It's from a moment in the Dick Van Dyke Show where a writer realizes that the very thing that makes network executives annoying can also be what makes them valuable.
He's a pest. He saves Alan money because he's a pest. We finish the scripts because he's a pest. Everything on the show gets done because he's a pest. So what?
So what?
So Mel's a pest.
Boy, that's some defense.
Right. Mel's a good producer.
A producer is a pest?
Sure. Some do it by wheedling. Some of them are dictators. Some of them are creative geniuses.
Yeah, and some are pests.
Right. Mel's maybe the world's leading pest producer.